Senate is expected to vote any minute now on a budget that includes Medicaid expansion. The major breakthrough comes after months of back and forth.
That's right. The House previously supported expanding coverage to around 400,000 Virginians. 13 News Now reporter Jacqueline Lee traveled to Richmond today.
It's been dramatic, to say the least, over the past 7 weeks here at the state capitol. It's been a knockdown, drag-out battle between Republican and Republican. The House and the Senate pointing fingers over whose fault it is that the state does not have a budget yet. But today, that all came to a head.
Watching from the sidelines, taxpayers are frustrated their representatives have taken so long to pass a budget.
This is all games being played. This can just keeps getting kicked down the road, and it should have been settled, but it's all grandstanding.
But lawmakers aren't happy about it either.
Have you been frustrated?
Frustrated is not even that's an understatement. This has been just grueling to have to keep coming back and going through this fight over and over again.
The battle over Medicaid expansion has been long and tiring. After years of resistance, the GOP-led House adopted it, but the Senate never got on board. Well, except for a few senators, including Frank Wagner.
I did switch my position, and by doing that, we were able to put in a firm work requirement. We put in some caps so that we cap the percentage of the general fund money that would be involved in there, and a lot of conservative measures that I think will make the Medicaid program a lot more efficient.
Opponents argue expansion is fiscally unsustainable and will lead to costs that will ultimately be absorbed by taxpayers. But Republican Delegate Glenn Davis said the current Medicaid system just isn't working.
The status quo isn't an option, and what we're doing today is starting a program that honestly hasn't been seen or executed in any other state.
And while the process has been long, Senator Wagner said that means it's working.
It's not meant to be easy. It's meant to be hard. It's meant to have a lot of debate.
In Richmond, Jacqueline Lee, 13 News Now.